Welcome to Questions We're Afraid to Ask.
Well, welcome, Jamie. We have Jamie Harpster. Did I say that right?
Yes, thank you.
Jamie Harpster with us today, who's the founder of Plain Wellness, which touches one of my passions, which is woodworking, and another interest that Daniel and I both have of mental health and wellness for mental health. Um, and I ran across you from another one of our guests that we had, James Wright from Wood by Wright, and he teaches with your organization, which is Plain Wellness. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
All right. And we'll put a link to the website for that. But thank you for joining us first. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
And
for having me.
tell me a little bit about what Plain Wellness is and how it got started.
Yeah, so Plain Wellness is a 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission is to improve mental wellness through woodworking while encouraging an inclusive community. So basically what that means is we give free woodworking courses. And one of the main reasons for that is hobbies improve mental wellness. And we want to make woodworking more accessible to people because if you know woodworking, it's expensive. A lot of the woodworking courses that are out there right now are just pricey.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that started too because I wanted to help people with their mental wellness. And when people go to therapy and they have a psychiatrist, all they focus on is talk therapy and medication. But my whole thing is, what does that person do outside of that? So if they see a therapist once a week, what do they do for the other 6 days of the week? What do they do on the weekends? What do they do after work? They need to keep their hands busy. So that's why we need to start incorporating more hobbies into our idea of wellness. So that's kind of where the mesh of woodworking and mental health came from.
Okay, cool. That's really neat. I told you a little bit earlier, but I went through a really nasty divorce, and there was the whole crazy trauma of COVID that was happening when I got interested in woodworking, and it helped. It really did. I like what you said about like doing something with your hands because there are tasks in woodworking that are very repetitive, like planing something, which is using a tool to make something flat over a long board, and you'd think, oh, that looks mind numbing, but it's not. It's very relaxing, and there's just something tactile about feeling like once you've got a fine tuned plane and feeling it cut across the wood, or seeing a project take form, and having something finish, um, and maybe even an aspect of control. Like if everything else is outside of control, I was able to make the wood do what I wanted it to. It didn't have to be pretty. And the first bench that I built isn't pretty, but it works and it's functional and I learned something and I get better each time. So at least that's what the appeal was for me. And then I'm a gear nerd. Doesn't matter if it's camping, Warhammer, computers, tools, and I'm like, oh, there's a new rabbit hole I can go down of like what are these tools? Oh, what's better, Japanese or Western? And oh, I have some of these old ones to restore. And there's so many aspects to the hobby.
Yes,
that it
that's
really
a huge
sucked
benefit
me
too
in.
because there's always something to learn.
Mm-hmm.
If you work on dovetail, I guess I should start with box joints. I worked on box joints for a year because I thought they'd be easier than dovetails. And then I learned dovetails were easier. So now I'm working on dovetails, and there's something that you can constantly keep growing on. And every time you learn it, you get that sense of accomplishment. On top of the projects, you get an accomplishment for learning that skill and then also for having a completed project. So there's just so many aspects of it that are peaceful.
Oh, absolutely. So what inspired the leap from woodworker hobbyist to I feel like I need to, because I'm sure starting a nonprofit is not easy. So what drew you to that? Because there's got to be passion behind it.
Yeah, so it kind of started back when I was a kid. I had always wanted to be a therapist. My initial goal was to be a therapist on the field of base for the military. So
Okay.
we would be on the actual bases. When they would go out on tour and come back, we'd be right there to provide therapy. That's what I wanted to do. And then essentially when I was training, I was doing self-defense class. I broke my wrist. And that was kind of the end of that dream of joining any kind of branch. I couldn't join the police, the sheriffs. I couldn't be a corrections officer because of that injury. So then I just said, let's go into mental health. And I started in mental health in 2014. I got my master's in 2019. And then I bought my house. discovered woodworking because I needed a table and I couldn't afford it. So I dove in head first. And then at that time, I realized how therapeutic woodworking was for myself
Hmm.
because I'm going into work every day helping these individuals who have attempted to take their life, and you're working with them every day, and that gets very, very heavy on an individual. So
Hmm.
woodworking quickly became my therapy. It then kind of morphed into I had people asking me questions, a lot of questions over and over again. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to start making a video. So when people ask, I can send them the link. And then when I was posting the videos, they actually got popular and people started watching the channel. And I said, wow, this could actually go somewhere. And I ended up monetizing that channel in under 12 weeks.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
started reaching out and people were contacting me talking about, how helpful this is to them. And they learned I'm in mental health. So when we talk about mental health and woodworking, and then the dream really started to come together of this is woodworking is therapeutic and there has to be a way to combine them. Um, and I guess if I'm honest, I started Plain Wellness on a whim. I had been thinking about mental health and woodworking for a long time, but it wasn't like I'm going to start a company and it's going to be this and it's going to be, it was kind of just, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And a year in, I'm very glad that I started it, even if it was on a whim.
That's awesome.
So where do you do this? Like, do
So
you
right
have?
now, most of our courses are virtual.
Oh,
We
okay,
do have
okay.
two, yeah, we have two in-person teachers. James Wright teaches over in Illinois, and then we have Shay Alexander down in Virginia. Um, all the other teachers are remote, but we're going to be adding three more. I call them like satellite locations. We're going to be adding three more next year, one in Maryland, one in Missouri, and then one in West Virginia. And we want to keep adding more, but our ultimate goal is to have our own facility where students would
Hmm.
come out, take courses with us. We would have them actually stay on site. So what I want to do is host some timber framing courses and build mini cabins so the students can
There you
stay in
go.
mini cabins. We'll have meals together, have campfires together. As that dream continues to grow, we want to have an event center so we can host things like handworks and have a museum so we can educate the public on woodworking tools, maybe have little demonstrations on how to use them. Really create like a woodworking paradise retreat center.
That's sounds really neat. Where are you looking at locating that? What's the ideal? Because it feels like most of the woodworking is like Midwestern, Northeast,
Yeah.
right? Because that seems to be where most of the tools hide
Yes.
and live.
Yep.
So it's a little harder to find stuff down here in Texas. It's not that it's not here, but it's almost like this isn't timber country,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it does.
We don't have the sawmills here. We don't have. We have, I guess, more of a history of simpler, older homes, and a lot of people don't realize this is a lot of the early homes were right out of the Sears and Roebuck's catalog,
Yep.
and were shipped here and then assembled, as opposed to that kind of built slowly over time
Yep.
stuff. And a lot of the furniture was that Sears and Roebuck shipped furniture in this part of the country.
The original IKEA.
Exactly, which is fascinating. The idea that you used to be able to order a house out of a catalog
Yep.
and furnish it out of a catalog, and it would all show up, and then people would come and slap them together.
Yep.
So we don't have as rich a woodworking tradition here. It's not that it's not here, but it's not as much as it is in the Northeast. When you kind of almost think Amish country, where you still
Yes.
see a lot of that stuff being done by hand.
Yep.
No.
Yeah. So I
So
live in Pennsylvania.
okay.
My initial thought was to set up in Pennsylvania, but I've been thinking more and more about West Virginia.
Hmm.
It's beautiful there, and the weather is more mild. So the winters don't get as bad as they do in Pennsylvania. The summers
Mhm.
don't get as hot and humid as they do in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
The other thing is West Virginia has a lot of incentives if you're going to move there and start a business, and even more incentives if it's a nonprofit with a museum and event center to draw crowds. So that's kind of where I'm looking. But honestly, when that time comes, the right place will show up. And it doesn't matter to me where it is because to me, the mission is the important thing. And if that mission ends up being in, I don't know, Utah, I'm going, you know?
No, that makes sense. And it's not like West Virginia is far from Pennsylvania. I mean,
Nope.
um,
Yeah, because all my family's here. So that's kind of the only reason I was like, Pennsylvania, plus it's kind of remote. But still, I'm set on this mission. So that's wherever we end up, that's where it's going to be.
that's cool. So what are some of the things that y'all have seen so far that you can share? Because I don't, we're not going to violate anybody's privacy or anything like
Yeah.
that. But what are some of your success stories? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of them have been military veterans. And when I initially started, for some reason, I wasn't thinking there would be a lot of military veterans, but that is the majority of the students that we serve right now. So a lot of them are having PTSD, depression,
Hmm.
anxiety. We've had some that have admitted to thinking about taking their life after coming home, and then they had discovered woodworking, and that's one of the things that saved their lives. I've had at least 7 students tell me that already, that they go into the shop and they're able to focus when, if they go into a crowd, they start having side effects of PTSD. But when they're in their shop and they're just planing a board or chopping out a mortise or something like that, they experience peace that they had never experienced after coming home. So I'd say
Wow.
those are the heaviest stories that I hear a lot. The other stories are people that just handle anxiety or handle depression. We've also gotten a lot of ADHD, which I personally have ADHD. That was one of my motivations for getting into mental health. It taught me to slow down. With ADHD, your brain goes a million miles a minute, all day, every day. But when I'm in the shop, it quiets down. It makes me feel like I have a normal brain, if that makes any sense, or I guess a standard type brain that's operating at a normal speed.
Hmm.
So we've gotten a lot of people with ADHD as well expressing the same thing.
Very cool.
So let's see. If somebody's looking to get started, I know y'all are offering classes,
Yep.
but somebody's intimidated by the cost, which is a huge part of woodworking. What how do you approach that? What do you recommend when you're talking to somebody? They're like, this looks interesting, but and I'm on a budget. I've got $50 a week to spend. How
Yep.
how am I going to get started with something like this? How would you? Because I know how I'd answer that question, but
Yeah.
um, I'd buy more money than I'd buy stuff that I couldn't afford. Right? That's,
Yeah.
um, like, what's your starting package? I guess that's the question I'm trying to ask for somebody who's
So
wanting to get in.
absolutely. Yeah. So you can complete almost every single project with 1 or 2 chisels, a plane, and a saw.
Hmm.
I mean, really, that's the bare minimum. I think there's a book by Vic Teslin that's the minimalist woodworker, and I
Hmm.
believe he talks about just 3 chisels, a 1 inch, 3/4, and ½ inch, I think, or maybe quarter inches in there somehow, um, and then just a saw and a plane. And finding those tools. There is a Facebook group. If people are on Facebook, it's called the Can I Have It Facebook group. They do auctions during the weekend and buy it nows during the week. And a lot of times you can get some pretty affordable tools on there
Oh
for
wow.
really good prices if flea markets aren't in your area.
Hmm.
If you have flea markets in your area, trust me, go there. The amount of amazing tools you can find there is crazy. I mean, the top of that chart right there, my buddy Brian found a Stanley #1 for $10. That's what's at flea markets. He
Wow.
also found a 602 for
Hmm.
$10. So, highly recommend flea markets first, as long as you're not worried about putting a little elbow grease into cleaning up the tools.
Hmm.
Rex Kruger and James Wright both have very, very good videos on how to clean them up and get them ready.
Yeah, they do. I speak from experience. I've followed both of them in restoring some stuff, and it's been very helpful.
Yep. They kind of helped me get to where I am. So
Okay.
when I started woodworking, I first started with woodworking for mere mortals, Steve Ramsey, because I
Hmm.
started out with power tools, and then I started becoming infatuated with hand tools. It was Rex Kruger, Annabelle Trades, and James Wright. So the fact that when I asked James Wright and he said he would teach for us, I was so jazzed because I was like, man, I've been following you forever.
Yeah,
So yes, highly recommend them.
I know we've interviewed James, we've interviewed Rex, and Daniel can attest that I was kind of like when Rex came on, I was kind of like, this is like,
Yep.
yeah, I'm talking to an
Oh
internet
yeah.
celebrity.
Well, he
So,
wants to teach for us too. He
oh,
wants
that's
to wait
cool.
until we have land. So he said, absolutely. As soon as you get a place that we can teach in person, he wants to teach for us as well.
What you mean? He's not going to teach in that shop that he bought just so that, or that he rents just so he can run his YouTube channel? That seems a little
So
sketchy.
he was saying that he's okay with recording and he's
Hmm.
okay with talking live, but not at the same time. So not
Ah.
video live,
Hmm.
I guess, and trying to teach a course live like that. He'd rather just do it in person because he
Yeah.
admits that he's not super tech savvy.
That's
Yeah.
that's fair. And
Yep.
delivering training virtually can be
It's a
interesting.
skill.
It is a
Yeah.
skill. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
We use the cameras trick. We use multiple cameras.
hmm.
So what we do typically is we have a plain wellness individual, or either me or one of the volunteers, moderators, they'll sit in the course and the teacher will have multiple cameras. So they can be talking to one camera. When they move over to start working on the project, we change the cameras for them so it can be very fluid within the class.
Mhm.
We also are very relaxed. I don't know if you guys have been in woodworking courses before, but some of them are pretty strict, pretty, straight backed type of a situation. Ours is very relaxed. It's very chill. So people are moving cameras around and they're talking about this, and we still learn, obviously, but it's relaxed. So I think that makes it a little bit easier to have ours virtually.
So there's some production value that goes into something like this. It's not just let's slap a camera up and hit
Nope.
the record button and start going.
Yep.
That makes sense. It's challenging to try and put something like that together, even if you're not doing it live.
Yeah.
Daniel and I played with doing a YouTube channel, and I will still occasionally upload to it. And there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot more than people think that there is.
Yes.
So you're looking for. It sounds like y'all need volunteers as you expand.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, there'll be various tasks that we need them for, because right now we have 6 teachers. We
Mhm.
plan on adding 3 more satellite locations, which is going to add 2 more teachers, and then we're going to be adding an additional 4 or 5 teachers. So we're going to have a lot of courses going on, and right now it's pretty much just me sitting in the courses. So if we have 2 occurring at the same time, or honestly, if I just need a break, we have some moderators that will volunteer and sit in on the courses for us. And then, for example, like James Wright is teaching a grooving plane course 2 weekends from now.
Mhm.
If a moderator is sitting in that course, we send them the lumber pack too, so they can participate in the course and moderate at the same time. So that's one of the areas we need volunteers. Um,
So you said
soon,
lumber pack? Is that part of the class?
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
So apologies. So he is teaching individuals how to build a grooving plane. So we're going to be sending them the lumber they need and the
Nice.
blade they need to make the plane. And we tend to try to do that for a lot of our courses. So we have another one coming up in November that's how to build a pinned butt joint box. We're going to send them a material pack for that. Because when you start woodworking, one of the toughest things to learn is how to mill lumber.
Mhm.
We don't want people to have to stress about that. We want them to feel the accomplishment of putting a project together and
Hmm.
not try to spend days and days trying to flatten a board yet.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I'm thinking of my youngest saw me playing on the building the bench and stuff, and he wanted to do so. He wanted to build something. So I went to Home Depot and picked up Lowe's or Home Depot and picked up one of the little woodworker kits, which
Yep.
is basically just nail it all together. And I mean, the look of accomplishment that comes off of something like that. I mean, start simple. Um, there's I like that. I like the okay. I don't have to go from rough sawn wood to a finished product. That's a little too intimidating, right? So we're spend a little bit more money, and this is one of the things I've heard as I've been watching some of it. Spend a little bit more money, get some of the pre-finished wood, so you can actually start getting projects made, as opposed to struggling how to make the lumber the right size. Or
Exactly.
I don't know if you've ever done this, but planing to the point where you're like, I don't have a board anymore. I just have
Yes.
curls.
Yep. When you're trying to
And
learn. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So we
like,
want to avoid that, because that can get, especially when you're starting out, that can get very, very frustrating.
mhm.
So we want to try to eliminate that part and show them the joy that they can get in woodworking. And then once you feel that joy, you will feel more inclined to spend the time that you'll need to learn how to flatten a board. But we don't want you to stop your hobby there. We want you to see the hobby first and then learn it more in detail.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons when people have asked me, it's like, oh, where can I go to start? I usually send them, and this isn't playing favorites, send them to Rex's channel for the Woodwork for Humans philosophy, as opposed to James's channel, which is a little more in depth, and like he's just abandoned all power tools completely, right? And just like, I think, I'm watching him right now build like a spring pole lathe because he doesn't want to buy and I'm like, dude, this is up here.
Yeah.
I need to start down here, where they're like, okay, here's 3 tools, um, and yeah. So you listed off like the chisels, a basic saw, and the plane. To me, because I know you said flea markets, our flea markets don't have tools here, not the same way that they do kind of as you go north and east.
Yeah.
You find more like farm implements or that kind of stuff, or bigger tools, or you're more likely to find a timber framing thing than you are a hand plane.
Yeah.
Um, if you're talking to somebody, they're like, I need to buy a plane, but I have to buy it new, and I am on a budget. Where are you going to send somebody? Because I know that's a huge thing, right? There's so much plane. There's so many plane shaped objects out there.
Yep.
What's your go to starter plane? Because chisels, I think you can pick up any brand of just like cheap chisels, and they'll work to get you going.
Yep.
You can buy any saw, right, at the box store, and it will cut. Especially the Japanese saws aren't expensive.
Yes.
But the plane seems to be like that's the hard tool to find.
Yeah.
Which I don't. I mean, I get it's the hobby's getting more interest. People are getting more interested in it, but there's not a lot of money in hand planes, like making new hand planes. So where are you going to send somebody?
So what I've kind of learned, and my answer would have been different 2 years ago.
Mhm.
What I've learned is whatever your budget is, max it out on the plane. Get the best plane that you can get for your money.
Okay.
So going to the top of the line, I mean, if you can afford a Clifton, modern Clifton, go for it. The modern Clifton is the best number 4 I've ever used in my life.
Okay.
But they're also very expensive, and I didn't buy it. I got it as a gift from a friend. So I can't say much to it. Next below that, obviously Lee Nielsen is fantastic, but they're also highly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I would say the Veritas Bevel Up jack plane,
Okay.
because you can get different irons for it that have different angles. You can get a toothed iron for it that serves as a scrub plane, and that's the plane I used for a long time. It was the only plane I had for a long, other than a block plane, for a very long time. So if that plane's in your budget, go for it. Stepping down from there, I would go with the Jorgensen from Lowe's. Phenomenal plane. It is. It's amazing. I love that plane so much. It's only $70, I think it is. They might be some quality control issues, so you're going to want to check for that. The edges might be a little sharp. You got to take a file to them. A lot of people hate the orange. You might need to repaint it, but $70. You know?
Yeah, I actually watched your series on that where you were comparing it, and you were like, "This plane doesn't suck." You know, it's
Yep, absolutely. Because I compared it to a Lee Nielsen.
Mhm.
Lee Nielsen makes phenomenal tools, so I don't want that to be a knock on them at all. They're made in America.
yeah.
I mean, phenomenal tools. They're expensive.
Mhm.
The Jorgen, all planes take shavings.
Yeah.
Most planes take shavings. Some of them need a little bit of legwork, but you can get pretty much any plane other than Harbor Freight to take to take a shaving. But if Jorgensen is too high, if Jorgensen is out of your budget, there is a Spears and Jackson plane that is on Amazon that I believe last I looked was $25. I did a review on that plane too. Amazing right out of the box. Obviously, you would need to clean up some of the quality control stuff, but it was a great plane for $25.
Oh, that's cool. The other one that I've played with a little bit, it's a completely different style, is the Japanese planes, the pull planes, the wooden ones, and some Chinese wooden bodied planes that I've seen that run about that $30 mark.
Yep.
And I looked them up the other day. They're about $160 right now. But when I bought them, it was a set of 7 Chinese style wooden bodied planes from like Temu or AliExpress or something like that. And they needed a little bit of tuning, not much, but for $100, I got 7 planes, and 5 of them work really, really, really well. Now, I wanted to go in and play with it, but I like the Jorgensen one because I have an old Cobalt.
That was my very first plane.
That worked okay. I mean, it worked okay, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll make it a scrub plane." But what I think the downside of the popularity of this, people starting to do it, I think it's awesome that people are doing it. It blew up during COVID, which I love that happened. But people realized old tools on eBay, and you're not finding the $20 planes anymore, the $30 planes anymore, or the stuff that you could clean up. Like it's kind of like the used car market, right? It's getting to the point where it's like so expensive now. It's like, well, I'll go buy a Stanley low angle jack plane, which that's the one I bought, and it worked fairly well. But I want people to get into it. That's the big thing for me. And that
then I would honestly vote if you want to go for the lowest budget price of everything possible. Spears and Jackson plane, which is about $25 on Amazon.
Okay.
One of those Japanese Zet saws,
Mm-hmm.
I believe is the name. Um, those are I think $15 on Amazon for a little dovetail one, and then you can get a Ryobi one that has the two sides and doesn't have a back, so you can rip and all that stuff on it. And then chisels. Surprisingly, my first chisel set was the Project Source from Lowe's. And once I got the backs flattened and I got the steel sharp,
Mm-hmm.
they held an edge for a very long time. They're that chrome vanadium or chrome verandium, whatever that. I'm not metal. That steel's awesome. And
Yeah.
those chisels were $13 for three. And right there, you have the core set of tools that can get you started. You can build on from there as you grow and advance with the hobby, but that's the cheapest option right there that are quality tools.
Yeah, and then that'll do it. And then just pick up any old hammer, and
Yeah.
you
Yep,
know,
mallet, yep.
just your $2 hammer from Harbor Freight.
Yep.
Or a decent hard rubber mallet or something like that, and
Yep.
and you're ready to go. Harbor Freight, I know I beat up on their planes, has been a real go-to for me for a lot of simple things like
Yes.
a speed square, a metal ruler,
Bevel gauge.
bevel gauge. I
Yep.
mean, those tools that you could spend hundreds of dollars on,
Yes, you can.
but it's a metal ruler. I need it to be a
Just make
straight
sure
edge.
it's accurate. That's
Yeah.
it. Just make sure it's accurate. Tape measure wise, though, have you guys ever seen the fast caps?
I don't
Fast
think so.
caps are the green tape measures that I am obsessed with because they tell you what every single line is.
Mm.
So
Oh,
when you were
nice.
starting out, and when I was starting out, I'd pull out that tape measure and I could see which line was 3/16.
Oh yeah.
You could see which line was a quarter inch. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
had them all lined out there for you. So those I highly recommend, and you can catch them on sale for $8.
My dad's got a couple of like really expensive ones because he's an electrician that for measuring that out, where they're all like the old metal ones.
Yep.
My dad was a Klein Tools guy forever.
Oh, yep.
From
Quality
back
stuff.
in the day. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So we kind of went down a tool rabbit hole there.
We
Sorry,
did. That's okay though. I like geeking out over tools.
I do too. So where or what can people, if people want to help, because not everybody can be where you're at. Not everybody's a woodworker who can do that kind of stuff. But I know there are people who are looking for places to help, especially around mental wellness. What do y'all need? Where can they contact you? What are you looking for if people are interested in trying to help get this
Yeah,
out there for
absolutely.
people?
Yeah. So the main thing right now is we have a Patreon that we're trying to get up and running because when we are looking at the idea of having land and having facility, that is going to come with some consistent monthly overhead bills.
Mm-hmm.
So we are trying to combat that with consistent monthly income. And because we give free courses, we never know what that's going to be because we also do pay our teachers a percentage of the proceeds.
Mm-hmm.
So we never know if we're going to make money on courses or not. So we are really, really promoting our Patreon to help us get more of a consistent monthly income. We obviously take just random donations. We have a link that's through the PayPal giving fund, so nobody has to pay any fees for us.
Okay.
And then I don't know when this is going to post, but we are going to be hosting do you guys know about Handworks? The woodworking tool event? Okay.
No.
So it's basically going to be a huge woodworking tool show where a lot of people are going to be bringing tools that they make. So there's people that make planes, that make marking gauges, that make marking knives. We'll also have vintage tools. So it's going to be a huge woodworking event that's going to be in July of next year. We're going to need volunteers for that. And then, of course, we're going to want some event participants there so we can have some raffles and silent auctions and those kinds of things, and then just bring the community together.
Cool. And where's that going to
Nice.
be?
That's going to be in Freeport, Pennsylvania.
Freeport, Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll have information on our website about that. I'm going to be putting it up in September. We're finalizing some of the sponsors and the vendor information this month, so then that way next month we can just start posting and announcing.
Awesome.
Nice.
Did you have a question, Daniel?
No, I'm
Sorry,
good.
it's glitching a little bit on me.
Yeah.
So, where do you see y'all? Where do you see the program in 5 years? Where do you see it in 10 years? Ideally, as things are going, what are what are your stretch goals?
Yeah. So
To use kind of
ideally,
a Kickstarter.
I'm going to start back with 3 years. So
Okay.
ideally, in 3 years, so 2 years from now, we will have a piece of land that has a building on it, so we
Okay.
can start hosting in-person courses. By 5 years, I want to have those cabins built. So students will then be staying with us, having meals with us, having fires with us, spending time with us. In 10 years, that's when I want to have the event in the museum center. I would love for that to happen tomorrow. But I mean,
Mhm.
we priced it out, and if we were going to build it from raw land, ground up, it'd be between 1.2 and $2 million. So it's just not realistic to say we're going to have that money tomorrow. So
Oh yeah.
three
Right.
years, have a shop. 5 years, have the cabins. 10 years, have the museum and the event center.
That's impressive,
Good
man.
goal. Yeah.
It is.
I'm dreamy. I'm dreamy. The board likes to keep me in check because I'm like, we're gonna have it tomorrow, and they're like, nah, Jamie, come on,
Yeah.
cool it down a little bit.
So that brings up, like, what did you have to set up to be a nonprofit? What were some of the hurdles you had to go through to get to that state?
There weren't many hurdles. There were errors on. I used LegalZoom.
Okay.
They made the process easy, but they forgot to submit our 501c3 paperwork twice.
Okay.
So that was a hurdle. And then I was working with the IRS, and we were trying to get it a rush because December was coming up, and I had people saying, "Hey, we've got money. We're going to donate it to you, but you need to have that 501c3."
Mhm.
So we were working with the IRS to try to rush it. They forgot to submit the paperwork. And then and the guy, he felt so bad, and I could tell he did. I said, "Don't worry, it's okay. We're good now. We got it approved. I think 2 weeks before December."
Okay.
So that was pretty much the only hurdle. I guess the only other thing that we're working on, or that I guess I'm personally dealing with, is I currently have 3 jobs because I work a full-time job that pays my bills. I don't
Mhm.
take anything from Plain Wellness, but that's pretty much turned into a full-time job. And then I have the YouTube channel, which I'm hoping does better, because the better YouTube does, the less money I'll eventually have to take from Plain Wellness when I leave my job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So those are the really two only hurdles that we've experienced. There's been so many positive experiences with this, and positive, just people getting behind us and believing in the mission and supporting us, that it's taken off way better than I ever would have expected in this amount of time. I think it was yesterday, the day before, we've officially given out 110 free seats. So that I expected to hit 100 by the end of the year, but courses only started in January.
Oh wow.
So I mean, it's
Nice.
exploded. It really has. We've gotten so much support. We've gotten a lot of sponsors, which I didn't expect. I think we're up to 14 sponsors now, 6 teachers, and like I said, we're going to be adding a bunch more. I reached out saying I wanted some moderators for a course, and boom, I had a list of 6 people that wanted to sit in. I mean, there's been blessings all around. I can't really say that there's been hurdles.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And so, if I just want to take a course, how
Yep.
would I, but I'm not doing it for my mental health, but I see y'all have a course.
Yep.
I'm sure those proceeds go to making everything work.
They do.
How would I go about doing that? How would I sign up for a course?
Yeah. So basically, we just go to our website, www.plainwellness.org. There's a list of courses there. When you click on the course, you can see all the information. And then at the bottom of the page, you're going to see register for the course or apply for a free course. And those are 2 different application forms. So one of them is going to prompt me to send you an invoice, and the other one is going to prompt you to send me documents of your diagnosis so I can give you the free course. And I want to point out too, because you hit the nail on the head, the people that pay for the courses essentially are paying to help us get tools and lumber out to the students, and to pay our teachers so we can keep these courses going. The amount that Plain Wellness, I guess, takes home on courses is very small. That it covers our overhead costs, so I can't really complain anything about that. But it's, when you pay for a course, you're helping people with mental health. It's that simple.
That's awesome. So I get to learn something.
Yep.
And it looks like I get the wood package for almost everything.
Yes.
And I got a product at the end of it, and I've helped somebody out.
Exactly.
That's a really, really neat way. And I was also saw here, because I pulled it up, that you can get a discount if you're a patron
Yes.
member as well, which is
Yep. So we have different tiers in the Patreon. Because I'm trying to think of most YouTubers have a Patreon where they give them exclusive videos and they give them early access, and we don't really have anything like that to be able to offer them. So part of what we're able to offer is they get discounts on courses up to 25%. And then the other thing we do is we do monthly giveaways. So typically, if we have a sponsor, for example, we just got a sponsor with Heartwood Tools. So the next month's giveaway is we gave away a $50 $50 gift card to Heartwood Tools.
That's cool.
Another month, we did a pack of exotic wood from Exotic Wood Zone. We had some things from Blue Spruce. So we try to do a monthly giveaway too, because it's essentially when you're a patron, you're signed up in a raffle every month for free.
Nice.
That's cool. That's it. I like it. It's interesting because a lot of the other channels and stuff. I get it. They've turned into like full time or half time jobs, so that they're like, if you want me to put out more content, pay, and this offsets costs and all that. You're trying to start something different.
Yeah.
It's not just ye old woodworking channel.
Yeah.
It's you're trying to help people. So I really that's a neat mission, and it's mental health has affected my family, and it's a very very important part of my life, is trying to get people the help that they need, and just doing it for yourself, because it doesn't have to be chronic for somebody to struggle with like anxiety or depression or that kind of
yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
That is a key. That's a key right there, because there are some people that go through you might not be diagnosed with depression, but you go through bouts of depression. And I've talked to a lot of people that just go down into the shop. I do this too. I go down in my shop and I plane a board. I have no intent to use the board for anything. I just take which plane I know is sharp and ready, and I plane the board. And the tactile feeling that you get back, the peace, the sound, all that, it helps. So that's the idea.
And I also really like the holistic idea of mental health here, because medication is important. I'm not dissing that.
Correct.
The talk therapy is important. I'm not dissing that. Inpatient therapy is important. All of those things are important, but it's the question you had of what do you do the other hours in the day or the other days in the week to continue this. And I struggled with it over COVID. I know, Daniel, you struggled with it a little bit over COVID, of that isolation and just feel like there was nowhere to go and needing some kind of outlet. So I'm encouraging, people to get into something. Daniel and I play D&D together. That's an outlet, that's therapy. Whack the monster over the head, right? Or do the crazy stuff that you would never do in real life through the game. Video games help people. We've got to look at more outlets.
Yes.
And that's what was, when I saw your program, I was like, that works. May not work for everybody, but that's going to work for a lot of people.
Yes. There's two
And-
notes I want to make on that too, because the board might get mad at me that I'm sharing this, but next year I'm hoping to add more trades to Plain Wellness. I want to add leatherworking. I want to add blacksmithing. I want to add welding. I want to add, because all of those things are still kind of incorporated in woodworking.
Mhm.
You want to know how to make a sheath? Let's make a course on that. You want to know how to weld your own table legs? Let's make a course on that. So I want to expand on that as well to incorporate more trades. But the other thing that I want to point out that you said is you and Daniel do this together. So that's the other part of our mission, is community. Because when you're woodworking, typically you're in your shop by yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going to help you, but hobbies are more effective when you have friends who are also interested in the craft. So that's part of the reason we want to have in-person courses, have the event center, have retreats, have all that kind of stuff to bring people together, meet friends that are also interested in woodworking. So when you have a question, you can talk about it. What was the last project you worked on? Or, I don't remember how to cut this joint. How do you do that? Or have you sharpened a saw before? Can you show me that? We need more of that as well, because Facebook is great. I have a lot of friends on Facebook. We talk on there a lot, but you also have a lot of keyboard warriors.
Mm-hmm.
You ask a question in some groups, they'll yell back at you, and it's not really helpful. So that's the other thing that we want to change, get people their friends that they can ask questions, maybe a mentorship program later down the line. That's something that we're thinking about as well, and get people together.
Well, that's a neat idea. And again, I think some people struggle with what part of the country they're in, because in some places clubs are a lot more common, or because I've heard Rex talk about his blacksmith club, and I've looked, and there's some blacksmith clubs in Texas, but the closest one is like 2 hours away. So we're very spread out here, there were, I don't know if they're still in Austin, there used to be a place where you could pay a monthly fee to get access to like a workshop.
They have
time
one of those
share
here
them.
still.
Is it still there? There were a couple. I know a few of them closed down over COVID that kind of broke a couple of those. But for the people who can't really afford, or I have another example. I have a buddy who was in Scouts, another Scout dad when my oldest was in Scouts, who loves sailing. He loves sailing. He's got a small sailboat, but he went in with several other people, and they basically lease a big, like 35, 40-foot sailboat, and it's got a monthly fee. It's for me it'd be outside of it, but for him he pays like $300 a month, and it's just like a monthly payment. But somebody else owns the boat, pays the taxes on the boat, pays the registration on the boat, pays the boat slip, pays the maintenance on the boat. So all he has to do is pay his $300, and he can show up anytime, and he's kind of time sharing the sailboat, right? It would be neat if there were some of these shops where we could time share the shop.
It's called a makerspace.
Yes.
Makers, thank you.
Yes.
And there's like 3 or 4 of them in Austin.
There are awesome. I knew there were.
Yeah.
I knew there were several, but the one I knew had shut down, because like if I want to get into welding, that stuff's expensive. If I want to get a CNC machine, that stuff's expensive. But like you said, meeting people is a good way to kind of timeshare that. I've got another buddy who woodworks too, but he's a all power woodworker.
Okay.
So I've been talking about, hey man, maybe one weekend I'll bring the boards down and I'll joint 100 boards for a couple of projects, and then come up and do. And he's talking about, well, hey, maybe I can bring some stuff up and we'll finish it with your hand tool stuff, but we'll do the big layout work down there at the other shop. So finding those connections, but I happen to know that person, right? And so what you're talking about is how do we get these communities together, right? And start connecting people.
Yeah, and one of the big ways to do that is the events. Handworks is something that I had mentioned earlier. It was a woodworking show. They used to do it very often, but I think they took like a 7-year break or 3-year break or whatever it was. But last year they hosted it, and there was 3,200 people there over the 2 days.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised how many people were like, wow, you live in Austin? I live in Austin. You live in Pittsburgh? I live in Pittsburgh. And it was making connections that way too. And then also having the satellite locations. We just did one in Timberville, Virginia, and there were people that were like, you're down the road from me. And they ended up being friends because they realized, oh, we're real close to each other. So we want to set up a lot of those too, so people can connect through the courses, but also connect when we have big events.
Well, that's an awesome mission. I look forward to seeing where it goes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
I do too.
absolutely.